Good morning. Welcome to the worship service of the Parish Church of Christ. We love you. We're glad to see you here with us this morning. I may need to clarify this announcement about the birthday party tomorrow night. It is ironic. Just Wednesday night, Rob was telling us that he read some scientific research that says that as a man gets older, the first sound he cannot distinguish is a woman's voice. The first sound that goes as a man gets older is a woman's voice. So Gina must get around an etch-a-sketch around the house with her to communicate with Rob. But the point is, don't bring gifts tomorrow night to the birthday party. No gifts, that's the point. What are you addicted to? Is it Reese's peanut butter cups? Is it jelly beans? At the first of this year, I have decided that I was going to cut back on my carbs that I eat. So when I have a hamburger, no bun, just the meat. Cut out orange juice because it's got 37, 40 grams of sugar in it. And I told myself on Saturdays, I told you last year that Rachel makes homemade biscuits every Saturday, and I told myself that I'm just going to eat one biscuit until I was faced with the temptation. 2 Saturdays ago, had one biscuit, scrambled eggs, sausage. If I had just got up at the table and left, I'd have been okay. But I could not turn down that second biscuit. Addictions. The devil does not know us as much as sometimes we think he does. The devil does not have supernatural knowledge about us. It's my opinion, my conviction, that what the devil does is he throws everything at us when we're little. When we're 10, 12 years old, teenagers, the devil just throws everything at us. Probably if you could and go back and think about the things that potentially could have been temptations for you as you were growing up, you could probably remember every type of temptation that the devil set before you as you were growing older. The thing is, most of what he throws at us, for us as individuals, it doesn't work. So the devil throws everything at you until he finds something that you give into. Then he knows. Then he knows what it is that trips you up, or trips me up. And that's the thing that he focuses on throughout the rest of our lives. And if he can get us dependent on any one thing or two things, anything besides being dependent on Jesus Christ, then to at least a certain extent, he's got us. He's got us depending on something besides Christ. And so an addiction is a dependence on something. It could be a dependence on a substance, like nicotine, or alcohol, or drugs, either illegal drugs or legal drugs. That is a physical dependency. But then there are also psychological dependencies, because an addiction is also a behavior. We get so caught up in doing the behavior that we wind up focusing our lives around that behavior. Like a housewife who starts hiding bottles around the house. Or a gambling addict who start shoplifting in order to support his addiction. It's a behavior to where we find that we can't function very well without it. Like the alcoholic who says, I need a drink. You see, they think I can't move forward in my life unless I have this substance to get me going. And so an addiction is a loss to some degree of self-control. When you talk to an addict, regardless of whether it's a physical addiction like a substance addiction or a psychological addiction, and they think, I can't go on. I can't control my life because of this addiction that controls my life and makes my decisions for me. Often, unfortunately, the addict even denies reality that he or she is an addict. Oftentimes they say, well, I can control it. I can stop it anytime I want to. And unfortunately, when they say that, it's a good sign that they're out of control. Because we become dependent on these things, substances or behaviors. Oftentimes, an addict can blame somebody else for the problems. An alcoholic might blame the boss who is domineering. Or we may blame our parents. Or we may blame our children. Or we may blame the neighbor. We blame somebody else besides accepting responsibility for our own decisions. And so in dealing with addiction, before we go any further, we have to recognize we have a problem. Because if we never recognize we've got a problem, we're never going to get over it. What causes addictions? Ultimately, of course, it's the devil. All sin stems from the devil. All sin is the devil's effort at trying to get us to turn our hearts and our lives away from Jesus and dependent on something else or somebody else. Just to use another illustration, the reason why we don't know what angels do today. The Bible teaches that angels are ministers of God, sent from heaven to serve those who are heirs of salvation, that is, Christians. That's word for word, Hebrews chapter 1, verse 1. But I believe that the reason why God doesn't tell us more explicitly what angels do is because He doesn't want us dependent on angels. He doesn't want us with the mentality that we've got an angel following us, helping us through our lives, because God doesn't want us dependent on angels. He wants us dependent on Him. And so He tells us just enough about angels to let us know that God is going to be there to help us out, to take care of us. In the same way, then, the devil works in these other ways to try to get us dependent on something else. So what causes addiction? Number one is emotional distress, emotional wounds. This is what causes addiction. Starting off with emotional problems. And in fact, I read one study that said that sex addicts, 81% of sex addicts were sexually abused. 74% were physically abused, but 97% were emotionally abused. And so, as husband and wives and as parents, particularly as parents, we have to make sure that we take care of our children and we raise our children in an emotionally, psychologically healthy home. That we don't have expectations of our children that are too high and that are beyond their reach. That we don't manipulate our children psychologically to get them to do what we want them to do. We have to be careful how we raise our children, that our home is psychologically healthy as well as spiritually. Another cause of addiction is related to that, and that is bad relationship between parents and children. Parents who don't have a relationship with their children. Dads who may be at home but are not at home. You know what I'm saying? A dad who may be physically in the house, but he's not emotionally present in the lives of his children. Or a home that is filled with stress. You step into the house and the noise level automatically goes up. And daddy's yelling at mom, and mom is yelling at daddy, and everybody's yelling at each other because the TV is up so loud you can't hear each other talk. And the expectations of one another are unrealistic. Expectations of perfection. Like a child who brings home an A, for example, on a report card. Maybe it's a low A, a 90, 91, 92. And the dad says, well, why isn't it a 98 or a 99? Maybe it could be, maybe it can't be. But are the expectations realistic? Another cause of addiction, of course, is chemical dependency. Even non-drug related addictions, like gambling, shopping addiction, pornography, internet addiction, even addictions that are behavior-oriented. They have a chemical effect on us. It stimulates the production of dopamine and other hormones in our body, and that's what gets us excited. Like at Christmas time, you get a Christmas bonus and you think, wow, I can go spend some money now. Is it stuff you need? 9 times out of 10, no. But if you're addicted to shopping, then what you're addicted to is the chemical feeling that your body gets when you buy more stuff. It's not that you need stuff, but we get that chemical kick that comes from that behavior that stimulates us. And so these are chemical dependencies, and one of the problems with it is that our bodies adjust to it so that we need something else. The kick has to be stronger next time, and stronger after that next time. That's why you ask almost any drug addict, and they will say it started with cigarettes. It started with cigarettes when they were 10 or 15 years old. Now some people, it never goes beyond that. But in others it does. Because once you get past that feeling of euphoria that the nicotine causes in your body, you get past that, your body gets adjusted to it, well then you've got to have something else. You've got to have another high. Something stronger. And so chemical dependency is one of the causes. But for Christians, one cause of addictions for us is that we forget who we are. And we forget whose we are. Sometimes you and I struggle with the problem of having unreal expectations of ourselves. How many times do we tell ourselves, I can't live like that? I can't live that perfectly. I can't live that sinlessly. And we have these unreal expectations as if I've got to live perfectly so that I can die on the cross. And it causes us to become dependent on something besides Jesus Christ. Because we're looking for some fulfillment in our lives, something to fill that void in our heart. And we become illogical and irrational, as it is to think that we can live perfectly and without sin. But the bottom line is all addiction is rebellion against God. As Brother Frank read from us in our scripture reading this morning, 1 Corinthians chapter 16, and I had to use the King James Version because of the way the translators translated that verse, and I hope you noticed it. Paul's talking about the Christians who belong to the house of Stephanus the Christian. And Paul says they had addicted themselves to the ministry of the saints. You see that word? Addicted themselves to Christ. So when we find ourselves dependent on something else to give us a high, what we've done is we've taken Christ